Welcome back, everyone! Caroline here to wrap up our tour of Europe. As you've seen, it's a great place to visit, and we hope you've enjoyed your time here. You've seen repeatedly why Europe is at the top of the list for tourists around the world. I mean, 5 of the world's top 10 destinations are on this continent. 6 if you count Turkey. We've seen some fantastic places in France, Spain, Italy, Germany, the UK, and Turkey to visit, huh? On top of that, Europe for many is a terrific place to live. While traversing the continent, we've provided you with eye-popping photos and insightful information as evidence of that. Today, we'll close out our tour with more facts about Europe's population, languages, religious and political and economic structures, while also comparing some of that data to the rest of the world as we prepare for a new journey. When we began our trek through Europe, we first presented the notion that the continent is actually the western end of a landmass called Eurasia. Europe really is just a region that is part of that landmass, classified separately from Asia based on history, culture, physical characteristics, and other factors. Within that region called Europe are several smaller regions. Geographers create those regions based on different criteria, but we remind you that Europe's formal, functional, perceptual, and even physical regions can vary based on who's doing the classification. For our purposes, we divide Europe into 6 regions: Western, Northern, Southwestern, Central, Eastern, and Southeastern Europe, as you can see here. You've analyzed each region, but now let's take a look at some of that information holistically. Let's start with languages. You've already heard the languages used in each nation, including English, French, German, Italian, Russian, and Spanish. Yeah, even something as simple as saying hello is not universal in Europe, but that array of languages has 3 basic origins. Most of Northern and Western Europe's languages, including English, Danish, Scottish, Norwegian, and Swedish, originate from the Germanic language family. The Romance languages of Spanish, French, Italian, Portuguese, and Romanian originate from Latin and are spoken in southwestern Europe and parts of southeastern Europe, as this map shows. And Central, Eastern, and much of southeastern Europe speak languages of Slavic origin. There are other languages, such as Greek, but those 3 language families cover the bulk of the continent. It's similar with religion. The vast majority of Europe is Christian, and while many denominations exist across the continent and its regions, there are 3 basic divisions of Christianity here. The cultural diffusion of Christianity is similar to that of language, as you can see on this map. Protestant beliefs, such as Anglicanism and Evangelical Lutheranism, are predominant in most of Northern and Western Europe. Southwestern and Central Europe, along with Ireland, adhere primarily to Catholicism. And in Eastern and Southeastern Europe, the majority of the people choose Orthodox Christian beliefs. In Turkey and parts of Southeastern Europe, you also see that Islam is the faith of choice for most. Likewise, the governments of Europe can be categorized into 2 groups: constitutional monarchies and republics. Nations such as the United Kingdom, Netherlands, Spain, Norway, Sweden, Denmark, and Belgium are constitutional monarchies, meaning royalty is the official head of state, but really just for diplomatic purposes. Leaders such as prime ministers are the heads of the government, and all have elected lawmaking bodies such as parliament. Most other European countries are republics. Nations such as France, Germany, Italy, Ireland, Russia, Ukraine, Poland, Hungary, and Portugal elect leaders such as presidents or prime ministers, in some cases both, while also voting for legislative bodies to make laws. By and large, most European nations are ranked highly from world organizations in terms of human rights and democratic processes. This is especially important to note as the continent served as the battleground of 2 world wars in the 20th century and several communist and dictatorial regimes. Economically, Europe is one of the most stable places in the world. The continent is filled with successful mixed market economies, and many of its nations enjoy some of the highest standards of living in the entire world. Think of it this way. Europe produces about 1/4 of the world's entire GDP, just less than North America's 28.2%, with Asia leading at almost 39%. South America, Africa, and Oceania combined have less than 9% of the world's output. Those statistics are more noteworthy when you remember 2 previously presented facts. First, less than 7% of the world's land is in Europe, and land means resources. Second, Europe has less than 10% of the world's population. The GDP per capita for Europe ranks behind only Oceania and North America in the world. Of course, you already know the disparity across the continent can be great, but most of Europe enjoys a lifestyle not found in parts of the world. Speaking of that disparity, the world's top 7 nations in GDP per capita are in Europe. The tiny countries of Monaco, Liechtenstein, and Luxembourg rank in the top 3, while Switzerland, Ireland, Norway, and Iceland finish out in the top 7. In comparison, the US ranks 8th. Europe as a whole maintains a high population density. We mentioned earlier that Europe is home to less than 10% of the world's population and less than 7% of the land. In fact, many cities in Europe are among the world's largest, and you can likely point out some on this map. When you consider the population density of the rest of the planet, you can see that Europe has some of the most concentrated settlement patterns in the world. However, you probably also see Europe trails its landmass neighbor among continents in population density. Asia, with about 60% of the world's population, has about 246 people per square mile, while Europe has around 188 people per square mile. No other continent is even close. Europe is among the world's leaders in life expectancy as well. In fact, European women live longer as a group than anyone else in the world, while the continent's men also live longer than most other males around the globe. As we prepare to leave Europe for our next destination, keep in mind that we have a lot of traveling left to do. I mean, we've visited only 3 continents thus far, right? That means we still have 4 to go. Before you grab your passport and suitcase, keep in mind the information you've learned thus far in this course, and pay special attention to today's lesson, as much of it serves as a precursor for the rest of our journey. For example, check out this map. The majority of populations shown in blue adhere to Christian beliefs. The areas we've visited thus far are almost all in that category, but we've yet to visit the bulk of the countries that follow Islam, Buddhism, Hinduism, Judaism, and other beliefs. Same with languages, as there is great diversity in store. You could likely manage to say hello to others in Latin America and Europe, possibly even in different languages. But how would you fare in Africa or Asia? We may soon find out. Perhaps it's best to sum up this way. So far, we've journeyed across North America, Latin America, and Europe. Those 3 continents, respectively, account for 16.3, 12, and 6.7% of the total land area on the planet, a total of 35%. Left on our travel itinerary are Asia, Africa, Antarctica, and Oceania, and all of the nations located on each of those continents. They total about 65%, almost 2/3 of the Earth's land. And, as you well know, those continents and nations are filled with people. Millions and even billions of people. In fact, the populations of Asia and Africa alone account for more than 3/4 of the world's population. Why, almost 60% of the Earth's inhabitants live in Asia alone. Those diverse peoples have many different languages and religious beliefs, as we've already mentioned. Now just imagine all the different foods, traditions, music, art, and other cultural characteristics that we have yet to explore. And in those nations, we will investigate the varied political and economic structures in place while also checking out all the great must-see tourist stops along the way. There are so many. It's been a great trip so far, but we have a lot of traveling to do and we're about to increase our pace. Catch your breath and keep your passport handy. Until next time, keep exploring.
Hey, hey.